In the final weeks of his life, as the pressures of fame and personal struggles consumed him, Elvis Presley made an urgent and unexpected call to the White House. The king of rock and roll, known for his charisma and larger-than-life persona, left President Jimmy Carter utterly stunned by what he said. It was a moment so surreal, so unbelievable, that it would become one of the most bizarre and haunting episodes of his tragic final days. What unfolded during that call defies explanation. You won't believe the strange and desperate request he made. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, was more than a musician. He was a cultural phenomenon. Rising from humble beginnings in Tupelo, Mississippi, his unmatched talent, electrifying performances, and unmistakable charisma propelled him to global superstardom. With chart-topping hits, sold-out shows, and adoring fans across the world, Elvis became a symbol of an era, a man whose voice and style revolutionized music forever. But beneath the glittering spotlight of fame, Elvis wrestled with a darkness that few could see, a battle that would ultimately define his final years. As the pressures of fame mounted, Elvis turned to prescription drugs, a choice that began as a means of coping, but soon spiraled into a destructive addiction. Friends and family described his erratic behavior, mood swings, and growing paranoia, which seemed a world away from the poised performer millions had come to idolize. By the late 1970s, the toll of his addiction was undeniable, manifesting not only in his health, but also in the strange decisions and actions that baffled those closest to him. These struggles, though hidden behind the gates of Graceland, would soon surface in ways that no one could have imagined. Yet Elvis had always been fascinated by power and influence, and his unique connection with the White House reflected this. In 1970, he famously met with President Richard Nixon in a surreal Oval Office encounter where he presented Nixon with an unexpected gift, a revolver. The meeting made headlines, leaving the public intrigued by the king's motivations. But as extraordinary as that moment was, it was nothing compared to the shocking turn of events that unfolded years later, involving another U.S. president. What Elvis did in the final weeks of his life would surpass even the wildest imaginations of his most devoted fans. The summer of 1977 was a tumultuous and tragic period in Elvis Presley's life. Behind the gates of Graceland, the king of rock and roll was a shadow of his former self. His health had deteriorated visibly, his once vibrant energy replaced by exhaustion and fragility. Years of battling a growing dependence on prescription drugs, particularly barbiturates, had taken their toll, blurring the lines between reality and paranoia. Yet, even in this fragile state, Elvis remained a man of action, a man who, when faced with a problem, took extraordinary measures to solve it. What he did next, however, would leave those around him, and even the highest office in the land, utterly stunned. In an astonishing turn of events, Elvis reached out to none other than President Jimmy Carter. Picking up the phone from the sanctity of his Graceland home, he made a direct call to the White House, a move that was as unexpected as it was desperate. The king's voice, once the powerful instrument of global hits, now came through shaky and incoherent. President Carter, unprepared for such an unusual exchange, described the shocking state of the man on the other end of the line. He was totally stoned and didn't know what he was saying. His sentences were almost incoherent, Carter later recalled, painting a picture of a man teetering on the edge, his once sharp mind clouded by the substances controlling his life. Despite the jumbled words and disjointed sentences, Carter listened patiently, trying to make sense of what Elvis was attempting to communicate. The call revealed more than just Elvis's impaired state. It unveiled a mind gripped by paranoia and desperation, seeking help in the most extraordinary way. What Elvis shared with Carter that day, though nearly incomprehensible, carried an urgency that spoke to his mental and emotional state in those final days. The full story behind this call, however, is as surreal as the idea of it ever happening. It's a moment that would forever tie two unlikely figures together in one of the strangest chapters of Elvis Presley's life. When Elvis Presley called President Jimmy Carter, his voice carried a mixture of urgency and confusion. Through the haze of his incoherent sentences, it became clear that Elvis had a specific and unusual request. He wanted Carter to grant a presidential pardon to a sheriff who was facing legal troubles. Elvis, in his distressed state, believed this situation was not just important, it was dire. To him, it seemed as though forces were conspiring against his friend, and Elvis felt compelled to act as the sheriff's champion. The desperation in his plea underscored the strange mix of loyalty, paranoia, and the need to protect those he cared about, even when his grasp on the situation was far from clear. As Carter listened, it became apparent that Elvis was battling more than the issues at hand. The king spoke of being shadowed by sinister forces, expressing fears that went beyond the sheriff's legal problems. Paranoia seeped into his words, painting a picture of a man overwhelmed by imagined threats and conspiracies. Carter, ever the diplomat, attempted to calm Elvis, gently steering the conversation back to reality. He patiently addressed the singer's concerns, trying to reassure him that these perceived forces were not out to get him. But calming Elvis in such a state was no easy task, and Carter found himself navigating a conversation as surreal as it was unsettling. Despite Carter's best efforts to explain the complexities of the legal process, how a pardon could not be issued before a trial or sentencing, it was clear that Elvis was struggling to comprehend. His determination to see justice served for his friend clashed with his inability to process the situation rationally. For Carter, the conversation was not just a glimpse into the legal misunderstanding, but also a window into the fragile state of one of the world's most beloved icons. As the call ended, Carter was left with the weight of the bizarre exchange, one that highlighted just how far Elvis had drifted from the confident, commanding performer the world once knew. This extraordinary moment, shrouded in confusion and desperation, remains a poignant reminder of the challenges Elvis faced in his tragic final days. Following their surreal phone conversation, President Jimmy Carter made the decision not to take any further calls from Elvis Presley. While the king attempted to reach out again, his efforts were met with silence from the White House. It wasn't out of malice or disregard, but rather a recognition of the futility of continuing such exchanges. Carter had done his best to provide clarity and reassurance during their first call, but it was evident that Elvis, lost in his haze of paranoia and confusion, was beyond the reach of logical reasoning. For Carter, engaging further would likely have led to more frustration and heartache, both for him and for Elvis. This poignant silence speaks volumes about Elvis's mental state in his final days. The man who had once captivated millions with his powerful voice and magnetic presence was now consumed by fear and despair. The crushing weight of fame, the relentless demands of being an icon, and the toll of years of addiction had taken an irreversible toll. Elvis was no longer just a performer or a celebrity. He had become a prisoner of his own success, his health and mind deteriorating under the pressure. The call to the White House was a desperate cry for control, a fleeting attempt to wield influence in a world where he felt increasingly powerless. In many ways, this moment encapsulates the tragedy of Elvis Presley's final days. Beneath the glitz and glamour, he was a man grappling with overwhelming struggles, isolated by his fame, and burdened by the expectations of an adoring world. The fact that he turned to the President of the United States, seeking a solution to problems both real and imagined, is a testament to how deeply disconnected he had become from the world around him. It was a moment of profound vulnerability, a reminder that even the most legendary figures are not immune to the challenges of being human. As the king's story drew to its heartbreaking close, this episode remains one of the most poignant and perplexing chapters in his legacy. For all his unparalleled success, Elvis Presley remained at his core a man grappling with profound struggles. Beneath the dazzling stage lights and global adoration lay a fragile human being, battling demons that fame could neither silence nor cure. The phone call he made, bizarre and desperate as it seemed, wasn't just an erratic moment in his tumultuous final days. It was a window into his troubled mind. It revealed the isolation, fear, and yearning for connection that often accompany those who bear the weight of an extraordinary life. This wasn't just the king of rock and roll reaching out. It was a man seeking solace, understanding, and perhaps a fleeting sense of control in a world that felt increasingly out of reach. The haunting nature of that call lies in what it represents. It wasn't merely a request or a conversation, it was a cry for help, cloaked in incoherence and paranoia that spoke volumes about Elvis's state of mind. As listeners, we can only imagine the depth of confusion and emotion behind his words, a stark contrast to the polished, confident image the world knew and loved. This singular moment serves as a powerful reminder that behind every icon is a person with vulnerabilities, battling the unseen struggles that fame often amplifies rather than diminishes. Now, the question lingers. What was Elvis truly trying to convey in that call? Was it an act of loyalty to a friend, a plea for intervention, or simply the manifestation of a mind consumed by fear and desperation? The answers remain elusive, leaving us to wonder about the complexities of a man whose life was anything but ordinary. What do you think Elvis was really trying to say? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective on this poignant and mysterious chapter of his life. If you enjoyed this captivating glimpse into one of the most mysterious and poignant moments from Elvis Presley's life, there's so much more to uncover. From untold stories to rare insights into the King's incredible journey, we're here to bring you closer to the legend like never before. Don't forget to like this video, share it with fellow Elvis fans, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more fascinating stories. And we'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. What do you think really happened during that unforgettable phone call? Let's keep the conversation going.